right, if you guys want one of these sheets, I'll be talking about values. They're over there, just so you can follow along. But that's for the next presentation, not for this one. So if you want to have one ahead of time, you can do that, inshallah.
You said we're going to be using that next class?
Not next class, just next presentation. Because I'm finishing this up from last week. So as soon as I'm done with this, I'm starting the new topic. So I just put out some extra copies for you guys to be able to follow along. Alrighty. Just... بسم الله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله وعلى آله وصحبه ومن والاه رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقهوا قولي. So our topic from last week, actually left over, was reflection, the power of reflection. We always use different terminology to describe what reflection is and how we should be engaging in it as Muslims, as an act of worship, right? And we often use these terms, tafakkur, tadabbur, muhasaba, as interchangeable terms, right? Which is okay if you're generally just talking about the topic of okay, how do we, pay attention to Allah's words and going deep. But there is a very subtle difference between each of these. So I'm just going to go over that real quick before we move on to the next one. So tadhakkur, right? Tadhakkur comes from the same word as dhikr, right? Dhikr is to remember Allah. So tadhakkur is to actively bring something to your attention, right? So let's say you're about to leave the house. Now you're actively remembering your keys and your wallet and your phone, right? That's tadhakkur. So in a religious sense, this would be okay, you're about to pray, so you'll make your niyyah. Right? You'll remind yourself to make your niyyah, because if you don't, there's no prayer without the intention, right? So that's an example of tadhakkur. Tafakkur is to actively bring something to your awareness. So it's very similar to the first one, but it's kind of like something you weren't really thinking about it, and now all of a sudden, you deliberately brought it to your attention, right, to your awareness. So let's say you're reading Qul Huwallahu Ahad, and you were just going through the motions and not really paying attention. And then you're like, oh, wait a second, I know the surah. I know the meaning of the surah, right? Sometimes it takes a second to click in when you're busy, and then you're like, oh, let me just stop for a second and think about what it actually means, right? What does it mean that Allah is one? What does one really mean, right? How does that have significance in my life? So you start going down this path of asking yourself questions about whatever you're reciting. Tadabbur is a little bit more specific. It's you start at a certain surah or a certain ayah, and you think about the beginning versus the end, right? So you take a certain ayah, and you'll be okay, where is Allah taking me with this, right? Because if you look at the Quran, the stories in the Quran, are they all in chronological order? They're not, right? The only one that is Surah Yusuf, right? So Yusuf is Allah starts at the beginning, and then he goes through the stages, chronological order, and then he ends. But the story of Musa alayhi salam, right? The story of Nuh alayhi salam, the story of Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, Allah just gives us little snapshots, right? So when we're doing tadabbur, our goal is to figure out, why is Allah taking me from point A to point B to point Z and then bringing me back to point D, right? It's kind of like a movie, right? Why is Allah doing that? It's to draw your attention to certain points, right? To certain parallels. Maybe there's a dua they made He wants you to focus on. Maybe there was, somebody got punished and He wants you to focus on why they got punished, right? Maybe somebody earned Allah's forgiveness. How did they earn Allah's forgiveness? So Allah takes you through the surahs in a very specific way. So when you're doing tadabbur on the Quran, you're okay, why is Allah using this certain pattern, right, in the Quran? Muhasaba is when you take yourself to account. It's a self-audit, right? And in the personal development world, even non-Muslims are talking about the importance of doing a self-audit, right? You sit down, you journal at night, you figure out, okay, did I meet my goals for the month? Did I meet my goals for the 6-month term, whatever? How am I doing in life? What do I want to accomplish? What do I where am I lacking, right? So in Islam, Umar radiallahu anhu, he said that do muhasabah of yourself before hisab is done of you, right? Meaning before you meet Allah, because every single one of us is going to stand in front of Allah. So he's basically saying is that you are going to have an easier time being held to account by Allah if you have already done that, right? Because it means that you are living your life in a responsible way. You are living your life in a way being conscious of Allah, okay, am I actually living up to the obligations? Am I actually doing the things that Allah asked me to do, right? That's muhasabah. And then muraqabah is to be watchful over your heart while being aware of Allah's presence. So the word that's actually in muraqabah is al-Raqib, Allah's name Raqib, right? Because Raqib means to be watchful, right? So when we think about Allah's name Ar-Raqib, it's okay, He's watching the whole universe, but He's also watching me, right? His gaze is upon me. So it's you're making yourself aware of the fact that Allah is watching you at all times, right? Muraqabah is a very specific type of meditation that you do. And the way my teacher specifically led us through it is like he had us focus. First, we did a lot of dhikr. And whether you believe in group dhikr or individual dhikr, doesn't really matter. You can do whichever one like the sheikh that you follow. But we basically did a collective dhikr, and then we did some individual dhikr. So the importance of dhikr is really, really important when you do muraqabah. Why? Because you want Allah to guide your thoughts, right? It's like a type of meditation. Think of it like as Islamic meditation, guided meditation, right?
Can I make a video?
It's already being made. It's going to be on Facebook. It's already recorded. You can go back. So, so when you're doing this meditation, it's like you have to purify your heart first, right? Because what can come between you and your remembrance of Allah if you're not careful? Like if you're trying to find answers about something, what can come in the middle? When we say قُلْ أَعُوذُ بِرَبِّ النَّاسِ, what is that surah about? قُلْ أَعُوذُ بِرَبِّ النَّاسِ, that whole surah, what is it about? Huh? Refuge from what? From shaitan, exactly. So if you're sitting down to do meditation and now like, who can come and corrupt your thoughts? Shaitan, right? So you want to, when you start off with guided meditation, you actually want to start with removing shaitan from the picture, right? How do you remove shaitan? You remove him when you say, isti'adha, yeah, you say, "A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajeem." You do a bunch of dhikr, and then you go into that state where you're like, okay, I want to connect with Allah, and I want Him to inspire me, right? And the way our teacher had us do it is like, okay, we did the dhikr, now we did our individual dhikr, and then we close our eyes, and he said, I want you to be aware of your heart. Just your heart, it's beating. Okay, that's your physical heart. Now what about your spiritual heart? You want to focus on your spiritual heart. Is there anything in there that could be considered a disease, spiritual disease, right? Do you find anything in your heart that you don't like? Are there any sins that you may have committed that are bothering you, right? Ask Allah for forgiveness, right? Is there like something that's weighing heavy on your conscience, right? Ask Allah to remove it from you. If anything is hurting, ask Allah to remove the pain, right? So you're making dua to Allah in a way. And then he said, imagine Allah looking down at you, right? So first you're looking at your heart, and then Allah is looking down at you, and Allah says in the Quran that He knows what's in the chest and even what's more hidden, right? Everything that you've hidden inside of your heart that you don't even know, Allah knows that. So basically now you're seeing as if Allah is seeing into your heart, right? Obviously you can't see Allah, but you know Allah sees you. So part of the muraqabah process is to go deeper and deeper and deeper, and you're going deeper into your own heart, and you're imagining that Allah is looking into your heart. Right? That's part of what muraqabah is. And a lot of people have actually found answers to problems that they were going through this process, right? So overthinking, basically, it causes a lot of confusion and agitation, right? People think that if I'm thinking so much, aren't I going to go into like whatever? That's with overthinking, right? But what we're talking about is reflection, right? When you reflect, when you do tafakkur or tadabbur, when you're using Allah's words, when you're using the words of the Prophet ﷺ, when you're using Allah's names, for example, you're not going to go into overthinking, right? Because it's the dhikr of Allah. It's not going to put your brain into overdrive. It's actually going to bring it back, right? So it's going to bring clarity and peace. So reflection it's deliberate and it's personal, right? Overthinking is something that is caused by shaitan. So if you have like a problem and you keep thinking about the problem over and over and over again, that's not from Allah, right? Because shaitan wants to torture you, right? So one of the ways that shaitan tortures us is through constantly reminding us about our mistakes, for example, right? Or constantly reminding us about how we let somebody down, or constantly just bringing some desires into our mind that we don't want, right? That's shaitan's way of torturing us, and then we have to be strong to fight it. But what reflection does, when you go really deep with your thinking, right, and you're actually choosing something to reflect upon, it's deepening your iman, because you're building a stronger connection with Allah. You're actually becoming closer with His words, right? And so we had talked about kashf and ilham in the past. So kashf is like a spiritual unveiling where Allah shows you something, right? And ilham is like inspiration from Allah. So when the mother of Musa alayhi salam, for example, when she was scared for her baby, right? When Fir'aun was killing all the baby boys, how did she know to put her son in the river? It's because Allah inspired her, right? So inspiration, and Allah talks in the Quran how He also inspired the bees. How do the bees know that they have to go to the flower and get the nectar and then, pollinate and all that kind of stuff? Because bees are some of the smartest animals, right? So Allah inspired the bees. So if Allah can inspire an animal, then what about us humans, right? Allah does inspire us as well, He inspires us to goodness. So the more you reflect, basically, it's like you're opening up your heart to receive Allah's guidance, okay? And then so you're exerting effort, and then Allah's helping you understand, and He's guiding your heart. Okay, so reflection is like an ocean, basically, right? It's deep. It can be a little scary, right? Because a lot of us, we keep ourselves busy with like listening to music or, you know, being around with people because we're like too scared to be alone, right? There's a lot of people who they don't even like their own company because they start thinking about negative things, right? They start thinking about the things that bring them pain. So we're always like with ourselves. But actually, reflection is like an ocean, right? If you do any of the 4 that we did before, tadabbur, tafakkur, muhasaba, muraqaba, if you do any of those, you're actually going deep into this ocean. And what happens when you get to the bottom of the ocean, you find pearls, right? And then you rise back up. Yes?
Muhasaba and muraqaba, can you translate?
I did. Yeah, we just went over it. We just went over in detail. Okay, so reflection creates clarity in your mind afterward. Whereas overthinking it's like a spider web. Like it's just gonna keep taking you, you know, you're gonna get stuck in it basically. Okay. All right. So the Prophet said in a hadith, he said, seek that which is beneficial and do not be helpless. So he's basically telling you to be proactive. Right? He's saying don't wait for bad things to happen to you. Don't wait for anything to happen to you. Right? You actually want to make things happen in your life. So the quality of a believer is that a believer is proactive. Okay? A believer finds opportunities and they go after them. So the reason he said beneficial, right? Have you guys ever heard of like beneficial versus non-beneficial knowledge? Is there such a thing? Can knowledge be bad? What type of knowledge could be bad? Fake news? Yeah, fake news. That sounds real. Like in COVID, people died because of fake news, right? They thought they could do something and then it turned out to not be true. Yeah, there was somebody who said like, just drink more water and you won't get COVID. People believed it. They were like, yeah, just drink some more water and I won't get COVID. You know, it's fake news, but people believed it. Another type of example would be like gossip, right? You're gaining information about somebody. If you gossip, right? If you read like a celebrity gossip magazine, you read like People or something, you're gonna find out information about celebs, but it's not doing anything for you, right? So whenever the Prophet ﷺ told us to seek knowledge, he told us seek beneficial knowledge, right? There's even a dua that we make, Allahumma, what is it? Allahumma inni as'aluka ilman nafi'a, right? Or like give us beneficial knowledge. So he's saying seek that which is beneficial for you and do not be helpless, okay? All right, I think that's pretty much it for this one. I'm going to go on to for today's topic. So for those of you guys who weren't here, we did this lesson last week actually. So I was finishing it up, and today's is something different. So can I translate muraqaba? Okay. Oh, by the way, for this lesson, I also have a couple of handouts. If you want to follow along, they're over there on that table. So I have extras. Okay, so muraqaba is basically like, comes from raqaba. Raqaba in Arabic means to watch, right? And Allah's name is Ar-Raqib. So Allah is always watching us, right? So the word muraqaba is like, some of the scholars in the past, they would sit and meditate. So some people think that meditation is a Hindu practice or a Buddhist practice, right? We didn't call it meditation, but it's basically the same thing almost, right? Like, but for ours is different because we use Allah's name. We actually call upon Allah and we make dua to Him. And then, so you sit quietly and you're like watching your thoughts, you're watching your intentions, and then like you're asking Allah to give you answers. You're asking Allah to like help you with a problem, for example, right? Does that make sense? Okay. All right. So for today, we're doing emotions, values, and New Year goal setting because today's our New Year, Muharram. So. Yeah, it's a sacred month for us, so. What happened? Today's the first, yeah, of Muharram. Okay. Yeah, this is very small, so that's why I had to, I printed it out for you guys because I couldn't make it any bigger than this. So this is a list of values, right? Just off the top, what is a value? We talk about values all the time, like our values as Muslims are blah, 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 or these are my values, I hold them very strong. What is a value, anyway? Because we can't talk about something if we don't know what it is, right? We have to define it first. What is a value? Sorry, go ahead. Okay, something you believe or uphold. I would say and. You believe and uphold. Yeah. Anybody else? How would you define it in your own words? There's a clue right there. What about it? What does the compass have to do with it? It tells you what? It tells you directions. Your values are the compass of your heart. It's an easy way to understand, right? Your values are the compass. If you lose the compass and you're a traveler, you're gone, right? There's no GPS. If your phone dies and there's no GPS and now you have just the compass and then you lost the compass too, then you're lost, right? So our values actually guide us. Guide us through what, right? They guide us through making decisions. They guide us as to who we should be around and who we should avoid in our lives. They guide us as to what kind of books we should read, what movies we should watch, who our teachers should be, right? Who are we picking to be our influencer? Because everyone's being influenced, right? Right? We get to choose who we're influenced by, right? So as Muslims, right, I'm going to go to the thing. Yeah. So if you look at that list, I'm going to go back to the list for a second, in a second. So what are some of our values as Muslims? So here we have accountability, achievement, adaptability, adventure, altruism, ambition, authenticity, balance, beauty, being the best, belonging, career, and caring. I just read the first 10. Anything stand out so far? Any Islamic value in there? That we can be like, yes, this is totally 100% Islamic. Yes. And what is the word in Arabic? We just talked about it. Not muraqaba. Huh? It was muhasaba. Because it comes from hisab, right? So a lot of these words have another word hidden in them. Right? Muraqaba has the word raqaba hidden in it. Right? Raqaba means to see. But muhasaba has the word hisab, right? Hisab means to take account, right? When Allah says, the day of judgment is known as Yawmul Hisab, right? The day of accountability. Yeah, so that's a good one, accountability.
So muhasaba is يحاسب نفسك قبل.
Your what?
Muhasaba is يحاسب نفسك قبل.
قبل أن تحاسبوا. Yeah. We're going to talk about that. Okay, so another one that stood out for me was being the best, right? Do you know there's more than 100 ahadith that start with the best one among you is, and then Prophet ﷺ states something. The best one among you is, do you guys know any of those hadith? Which one? Yes, the best of you are those who learn the Quran and teach it to others. Does that mean that's the only one who's the best? What if I don't know Quran? What if I'm a weak reciter? What if I didn't learn Quran until I was 45 and my recitation is so bad and I'm struggling to read Quran? Does that mean I can't be the best? You're still trying, right? But there's other ways to be the best, right? There's so many different ahadith. So there's a list of that. You can actually Google it, the 100 ahadith of the best Muslims, right? And it's interesting because the Prophet ﷺ opened the door to virtually every kind of Muslim to be able to fall in that category. But you might be like, hey, but if everybody's the best, nobody's the best. Logically, it doesn't make sense, right? Because if you're the best, doesn't it mean you're number one? From our worldly standards, right? If you're the best, only you can be the best, right? But in the Quran, I don't know which prophet it was, but Allah's quoting somebody in the Quran, right? And he says make me among the righteous, make me among the people who are the best. So what that does is it includes you in a group of people, right? So if you're the best, then you could become arrogant, right? Because you might be like, I'm the best, I'm on top of everybody. But if you say, oh Allah, make me among the best, then it's okay, there can be a group of us, right? So I don't want to be like the disbelievers who are, transgressing and doing all these evil things. I want to be above that. But I don't want to be just an average Muslim. I want to be above that, right? So you're there's levels of practicing, right? There's Muslim, there's mu'min, there's muhsin. So you're asking Allah to make you among the muhsinin, right? So that's the dua we should make. Oh Allah, make me among the best. right? Among that whole group. I don't want to just be there on top by myself, right? It's going to get pretty lonely up there. All right. Oh, this is going backwards. Okay. The whole game got messed up. Okay, you know what? It's going to go in reverse now. You guys know Guess Who?
Yes.
Okay, so it's supposed to be like I was going to give you the values, and then you guys were going to give me the answer, but since this is acting up, you have the answer, now give me the values that he would stand for. Umar radiallahu anh. Pick from the list. Which values do you think that he would stand for the most? Justice. Who said that? Okay. Adil. Yeah, he was the most just. Justice, that's amazing, mashallah. That's one of his top qualities. Yes? Self-respect. That's really a good one. What does self-respect mean, even? How do you define that? Why would we say Umar has self-respect out of all the different, people? Why would that be like one of his top 5 or top 3? Okay, he didn't take nonsense from anybody, right? He was strong. People knew that he was strong. Muslims and non-Muslims alike, right? He had that kind of strength. A third one, yes. Wealth? Okay, he was wealthy. Don't know if that was a value, but he was definitely wealthy, huh?
Self-discipline.
Self-discipline? Yeah, that was a great one. Yeah, he was very, very, very disciplined, mashallah. Okay, so let's see what I put. Okay, I put justice, loyalty, and intuition. So justice is, yeah, we got that one. Loyalty, I put that one because before he became Muslim, what did he want to do? Yeah, accountability. Before he became Muslim, anybody know the story? Before Umar radiallahu anh became Muslim, what did he want to do? Kill the Prophet. Yeah. As soon as he took the Shahada, what happened? Complete 180, right? His heart flipped. He became the most loyal person to the Prophet ﷺ ever, right? That's why I put loyalty personally. But like I said, values are very flexible, right? Any one of them can go. Intuition, I put that specifically because we talked about intuition. It's like when Allah guides your thoughts, Allah guides your heart. Umar radiallahu anh, his intuition was so powerful that the Prophet ﷺ said that even Allah agrees with his intuition. At the Treaty of Hudaybiyah, when they were having, the disagreement that they were having, and the Prophet ﷺ was actually, he didn't know what to do because Allah's command had not come, right? We know the Prophet ﷺ did not make decisions on his own. He would wait for Allah's command, and he would wait for Allah to tell him what to do. So when they were at the Treaty of Hudaybiyah and the disbelievers said, you're not allowed to go, at the plains of Hudaybiyah, sorry, the treaty didn't happen yet. The disbelievers said, you're not allowed to go and do Umrah, right? But they're like, we are already in Ihram, we have to go. And the disbelievers are like, no, you can't go. And so Umar radiallahu anh, he got very angry. He said, Ya Rasulullah, aren't we on the truth? Aren't we on the haqq? Why are we going to turn back and go to Medina? We're trying to go for Umrah. Why can't we go? And Prophet ﷺ did not say anything. He stayed silent. But later there was a verse that was revealed that basically Allah told them to go back. Right? Allah ended up telling them to go back. So then they signed the treaty. They set some conditions and terms. It's a really long story. And then they ended up going back, and the Muslims did not do Umrah that year. But Allah had initially, basically Allah had agreed with Umar radiallahu anhu's his intuition, right? He was basically saying that we're right. We shouldn't have to back down. But Allah had a greater wisdom, which is why He told them to back down, right? So Umar radiallahu anh, that's why he's called Umar al-Faruq as well. That's one of his nicknames. Because al-Faruq means the one who differentiates between right and wrong, right? You cannot differentiate between right and wrong if you don't have knowledge, wisdom, and intuition, right? That's what he had. All right, let's see what the game does now. Okay, it's going backwards again. Abu Bakr radiallahu anh. What are some of the values that Abu Bakr radiallahu anh would have? Yes, honesty. Okay, as-Siddiq, right? Abu Bakr as-Siddiq, the one who is truthful, and he affirms the truth as well.
He was a strong, very strong people. He used to the shaitan when he overcome the shaitan was there.
Oh, so we're talking about Abu Bakr now, but that's true, yes. Umar radiallahu anh, he was very strong spiritually. Okay, so for Abu Bakr we said, huh?
Very generous.
Generous, yes, he was very generous. Okay, that's 2. We had, what was the first one? Honest and generous. And then what's the third value he might have had? Somebody said something? You guys are just whispering. There's no wrong answer. There's no wrong answer. What was it? Loyalty. Okay, maybe. Okay, so I put excellence, contribution, and service. But I like yours better, to be honest. I put excellence because he was always trying to do the best, right? Always trying to bring the most money. He was the fastest in doing his good deeds. And he basically, once the Prophet ﷺ, I think, was sitting in the gathering, right? I don't remember all the questions he asked, but he basically asked the Sahaba, like, who has given sadaqah today? And Abu Bakr raised his hand. And a few other people raised their hand, right? And then he says, okay, who has attended a janazah today? Abu Bakr raised his hand again, and a couple of other people, but different people, right? And he asked two more questions. I don't remember what they were. Every single time he asked, who has done a good deed today? Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu raised his hand. And there were other people who raised their hands, but nobody did all four, basically. So every single day, his standard for himself was that he would do a variety of good deeds. It wasn't like, yeah, today I helped my mom, so like I don't need to, pray my nafil or whatever. Or like, today I prayed Fajr on time, so like it's okay if I delay my Isha, like whatever, it doesn't matter. He wasn't like that. If he did one good deed, he would not just relax on the couch and sit down and be like, yeah, now I enjoy, like I can just whatever, like, I don't have to do any more good. That was never his way of thinking, right? He was always like, okay, what's the next thing I can do? Who's the next person I can help? Where's the next opportunity for sadaqah? What can I do? He was always like in the state of like, okay, I want to do more good, more good, more good, right? That was Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu. Contribution, again, because of his money, right? There was a time when the Prophet ﷺ asked, they were raising money for war, right? They were going to fight the people who had wronged them. And the Prophet ﷺ said, okay, we need money, we need resources. Who can, bring us wealth from their house? So Abu Bakr goes, and he brings like everything, like just grabs everything he finds in his house and goes, Ya Rasulullah, here. Sallallahu like here. And then he goes, okay, what did you leave for your family? Like this is a lot, like whatever you brought is a lot. What did you leave them? Like, did you leave anything for your family? He said, yeah, I left for them Allah and His Messenger. Meaning he didn't leave them anything. He brought everything in his house. Like he emptied the cupboards, he got the gold, he got every single thing he had in his home. He said, Ya Rasulullah, here, I present it to you. That was Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu's level of contribution, right? And when Umar tried to compete with him, he brought half of his wealth, and he was thinking, today I'm going to beat Abu Bakr. That's it. Today's the day. I'm bringing half my wealth. How is he going to beat me? And then Abu Bakr, he saw the amount that Abu Bakr brought, and then the Prophet ﷺ asked Umar, how much did you leave your family? He said, I left them 50%, Ya Rasulullah. So I basically brought half my wealth. And when Umar radiallahu anh saw what Abu Bakr brought, he started crying. And he was like, from now on, I've given up hope that I can compete with you. Right? Even though we know Umar was such a strong man, right? He was so like he was physically strong and also just very, very a tough guy. But he started crying when he saw that, and he was like, I cannot compete with Abu Bakr. Because I cannot compete with his level of iman, his level of service. How much he loves to give, I cannot compete with it. Like I've stopped my competition, right? So that was him. All right, Khadija radiallahu anha, one of my favorites. What are some values that she might have?
She's a business lady.
Business lady, yes. Loyalty, yeah, that's a good one. Patience. First to accept Islam, and yes. Faith? Okay. I think faith is for all of us, pretty much. Because, yeah, faith is it's funny because this is used for like non-Muslims and like non-Muslim places. When I was in college, they made us do this too. And so many people were putting faith up there. I didn't even bother putting it because for me it was like a no-brainer. But I was like, oh, maybe I should, because I'm sitting in a non-Muslim circle, I should put faith up there. So it was kind of funny. But, okay, let's see what we have. Compassion, service, and love. I still like yours better. Loyalty was, I think, stronger. But I put love specifically because that was his wife, right? The beauty? Well, she was beautiful, yeah. But is beauty listed? Oh, it is. Okay, beauty is listed as a value. That's amazing. She was very wealthy, yeah. So compassion, like we all know the story of like when revelation came down, the Prophet ﷺ was scared. He ran to Khadija, right? She wasn't just like, like imagine a guy, like a grown man is running, right? And he's scared. He's like, freaking out. What would we say? If we saw that, like if a family member of ours, like imagine somebody's husband or their dad or their brother who's a grown man comes running into the house looking like they just saw a ghost, would our reaction be the same as Khadija radiallahu anha's reaction? Or would it be like, hey, get a grip, what the heck's wrong with you? You know, why do you look like you saw a ghost? Being sarcastic, right? Putting the person down, making them feel bad for being scared because they're an adult, they shouldn't be scared, right? She didn't have any of those reactions, right? To us, that's the messenger, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. To her, that was her husband, right? So they had a normal husband-wife relationship. She could have been sarcastic, right? For all we know, he wasn't even a prophet yet, right? He just got the revelation that same day. So she could have had any type of response. She could have been dismissive, like, yeah, whatever, leave me alone, I'm busy right now. No, we know her response. She supported him, right? She supported him. And she said, like he said, cover me, and she covered him, and she just sat there with him until he stopped shaking, right? That was who she was.
And she is all the roots in Islam as it say you are such a good person.
Exactly.
Not, you know,
Exactly. And so, yeah, she reassured him. She told him, because he thought, am I going crazy? He asked her, is something wrong with me? Like, am I having hallucinations? Is something going on with me? Like, am I not okay? She said, no, you're perfectly fine. Why would Allah punish you? Why would anything be wrong with you? And she told him she reminded him of all the good things he did, right? Like, you help the poor, you honor your guests, right? You help the poor and the needy. You help your family. You maintain family relationships. You're not somebody to cut people off. Why is Allah going to cut you off, right? Why is Allah going to make you lose your mind? Allah wouldn't do that to somebody like you. So she's reaffirming his character, reaffirming who he is, reminding him of who he is, right? Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam.
she said to her uncle or something.
Her cousin, yeah,
That was that time, and he said that
yeah,
if I had lived, I would live. This is
Yeah.
the signs of God.
exactly, yeah. All right, Ammar ibn Yasir. This was a companion of the Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. Do you guys know his story? Anybody heard his story before? Ammar ibn Yasir. Okay, so he is.
The first time I heard it.
Oh, really? So he's famously known for being tortured in Mecca. Him and his family were both tortured in Mecca, and the Prophet ﷺ was passing by, and he saw him, his mother, and his father, who were both elderly, all three of them, the whole family being tortured. And he passed by, and he couldn't do anything. And he said, "O family of Yasir, be patient, because Jannah is waiting for you." I forgot the name of the guy. Forgot his name. He was one of like the big Quraysh, like one of the chiefs, and they were slaves, by the way. His father and his mother were both enslaved, and that's why the Prophet ﷺ couldn't do anything, because they belonged to somebody else. So the owner himself was a mushrik. So he was torturing them to get them out of Islam, but they said, we're not going to give up. But they were basically like, I don't know if they look like they're about to give up, but you know when somebody's like really suffering, you don't want them to give up, right? Like you want them to die upon Iman. So the Prophet ﷺ was encouraging them, because he couldn't actually take them away from that situation, but he said, "O family of Yasir, have patience." So what could some of their values be? What might be him and his family's values? Patience, yeah, that's the obvious one.
Sabr.
Huh?
Sabr.
Sabr, yeah, sabr. Okay, so one is patience. What else do we think might be their value? Courage? Okay, that's a good one. I don't think I've even put that. No, they died. Well, I don't know about Ammar himself. His parents passed away. His mother was Sumayya. She was the first martyr in Islam. That was her. The first, yeah, the guy who was torturing her, he actually put a spear through her private area. That's how he killed her. And she was the first person to die for Islam. So she and her husband, they both went to Jannah. Ammar ibn Yasir, he's also, I just don't remember if he died then or if he died later. But the whole family is basically promised Jannah because of that, right? Patience, understanding. The reason I put understanding actually was because when the Prophet ﷺ gave them that hope and that reassurance, they understood. Like they didn't argue back with the Prophet ﷺ like, oh, why can't you free us right now? Or like, why do we have to go through this torture? Why do we have to suffer? They just quietly accepted the qadr of Allah, and they said, okay, if the Prophet ﷺ is giving us a promise, we're just going to take it, right? So that they showed understanding. But I like what you said, courage was a huge one. And commitment to deen, basically, right? They were willing to die for their deen, and they actually died for their deen, right? So a lot of us like to say we would die for our deen, but somebody put a gun to our head, we don't know. We hope that we'd say La ilaha illallah, right? All right, Fatima radiallahu anha. I'll try to move a little bit faster. Really fast. Quick top of your head. What values might Fatima radiallahu anha have? She was the Prophet's favorite daughter. Patience? Okay, let's see. Oh, well. I mean, patience should be one of it. She was very patient. You guys are better at this than I am. Next time I'll have to get you to make the questions. All right, so I put love, loyalty, and dignity. Love because obviously the Prophet loved her a lot, and she loved him a lot, so much so that she was the first person to die after his death. When he was on his deathbed, the Prophet he called Fatima radiallahu anha close to him, and he whispered two things in her ear. And the first one made her cry, and then the second one made her laugh. And Aisha radiallahu anha was watching from a distance, and she was like, hey, what did the Prophet tell you? And she's like, I'm not going to tell you right now. But when the Prophet passes away, and she tells her, he told me that he's going to die soon. That's why I cried. And then he told me that I'm going to be the first person to join him from his family in Jannah. So I started laughing. And then it happened. A couple months after, Fatima radiallahu anha also passed away. Exactly, like she wanted to join the Prophet as soon as possible. She couldn't stand living without him even for like a short amount of time, right? So he was very, very attached to her, and both of them were very attached to each other. And on one occasion, he said, whatever hurts Fatima hurts me, and whatever brings joy to Fatima brings joy to me. That's the close relationship they had, right? So that was her love and her loyalty. And her dignity, I put that there because there are several narrations talking about how she was very, very modest, like to the point where she would wear, like her abaya would be so long that it would drag behind her because she wanted to erase her footprints. Like she didn't want anybody to even see like a trace of her body. I don't know how authentic that is, but she was known to be very, very modest. Okay, I'm just gonna go through because we don't have time. So I put knowledge, learning, self-expression because she was very young when she lived with the Prophet ﷺ, right? And one of the wisdoms of Allah behind that is that Allah wanted her to absorb all the knowledge from him, right? Because kids absorb knowledge much faster. So one of the reasons why Allah told the Prophet ﷺ to marry Aisha at a very young age is because she was going to learn everything from him. And turns out she has narrated the second largest collection of ahadith, which is, it goes up to like the 100,000s. Right? Abu Hurairah radiallahu anh, he's the top narrator of hadith, and right under him is Aisha radiallahu anha, a woman, right? So for people who say like, oh, Islam doesn't, respect or value women, well, that's, we wouldn't have a lot of the hadith that we have without her, right? Without her scholarship. She was a scholar. Like after the Prophet passed away, the Sahaba would come to her house, and she had a curtain, right? Because as a wife of the Prophet, she could not like directly engage with them. So she had a curtain, and from behind the curtain, she would teach the senior Sahaba. The Sahaba who were close to the Prophet ﷺ, she would teach them. They would come ask her questions, right? So that was her status. Knowledge and learning. Self-expression, I put that there because she's known to have a very like feisty personality, right? We're often taught like, oh, Muslim women are quiet and shy and like, they just like hide themselves away, and they don't laugh out loud, and they don't like talk out loud, and they don't make themselves known or seen or heard, right? In some cultures you have this, right? She was the opposite of that. She was bold, she was very confident, she was loud, right? She would do things where other people would be like, oh, how could you do that? But the Prophet wasn't like, he didn't get angry with her in that way. He would just teach her very gently and be like, okay, don't behave this way, right? Or like, whatever. So she had a very like I guess, how do I say this? A very bold personality, okay? And she didn't change herself for anybody. She was very bold. All right, okay, so the importance of values. Why is it so important? Why is this list so important? It's because if you don't have your compass, you don't have your values, you don't know who you are, right? You don't know what are your top 3 values or your top 5 values, you're going to be an unhappy person, right? And you're actually also easier to manipulate. If you don't know what you stand for, then people can come and change your mind easily, right? That's why you have to be smart and you have to be strong with your values. Whereas if you live by your values, it makes you a happier person. A lot of people are chasing happiness. Like, what's going to make me happy? Is it the next car, the next iPhone? Like, what exactly do I need to be happy? It's living by what you believe in. right? I'm going to use one as an example, like kindness. If you truly actually value kindness and being a kind person, when you are unkind to somebody, it's going to bother you the whole day. That's how you know what your value is. That if you go against your value, it will bother you and you won't be able to sleep. That's one way to figure out your value, right? If knowledge is a value of yours, right, then if you're not able to get into the college of your choice, or you're not able to go to, like, let's say a sheikh came from like overseas, right, or like some other state, and like he's holding a seminar, and you're like, yeah, I'm gonna go this weekend with my friends, it's gonna be awesome, and then something happens, you're not able to go. It's gonna bother you because you valued that knowledge. You valued like the sheikh coming from overseas. You wanted to be there, but you weren't there, right? So that's one way to figure it out. Understanding your values makes you less judgmental of others and more tolerant of things you don't understand. So here's a kicker. All of us are judgmental. We are, all of us. We all make judgments about people. From the way they're dressed, from the way they talk, maybe even the country they come from, the school they go to, right? Don't you guys judge people based on the school they go to? Like, oh, that's a loser school, or that's a popular school. Like, yeah, I know. You guys judge each other based on the school you go to. So, and like, even in college, people do that. Like, oh, that's a loser college, their sports program sucks, or their art program sucks, right? Like, we make judgments about institutions, about people. I mean, it's unfortunate. We shouldn't be looking down on anybody. But making a judgment is a human thing, right? So if you understand values, when somebody acts in a way that is different from you, you can be like, oh, maybe something else is more important to them, right? It's not necessary that somebody has to value something the same way you value it, right? So sometimes there's no actual right or wrong answer. Allah allowed flexibility, right? So there's an ayah. It's a very powerful ayah, but again, kind of fits the theme. Allah says, whoever turns away from my reminder, meaning the Quran, will certainly have a miserable life, and we will raise them up on the day of judgment blind. It's a very powerful ayat. Basically, Allah is saying, like, if you turn away from His dhikr, His remembrance, right? That's what the Quran is. If you turn away from Allah's guidance, right? Allah's telling you to do. If we talked about values as your compass, right? So let's say your values are Islamic. Hopefully, I'm assuming that all of our values that we have, our top 3, our top 5 values, whatever they are Islamic, right? It's not like greed or competition or something. If we turn away from those, Allah is telling us Himself that our life is going to become very miserable. It's going to be constricting. It's going to feel like life is closing in on you like this. But the moment you open yourself up to living by your values, right? Granted that they're grounded in the Quran and Sunnah, then Allah will open up your life. It's going to feel like Allah's nur is coming into your life, and you're going to have an easier life, okay? All right, so I just wanted to do like a little scenario thing, and these specifically can apply to like marriage or friendship. Freedom versus commitment. So let's say person A values freedom, and person B values commitment. What kind of a problem might they have? What conflict are they going to have? Yeah. Yeah, go ahead. Yeah, explain. Yeah.
Maybe when someone has freedom, they
Uh-huh.
kind of want to not feel tied down.
Yeah.
Someone who's committed may want some time, energy.
Exactly. And is one person wrong? Any of them wrong? They're not, right? It's just what they really, really need, right? Values are not just, you don't just choose values because you like them. Right? Sometimes values are tied to what you need as a person, right? So if somebody values freedom, it means maybe they grew up feeling claustrophobic. Maybe they were like one of 8 kids in a huge family living in a tiny house. And now being around people feels really claustrophobic, like you just don't want to be around people. And you never had space growing up, so now when they become an adult, they value their freedom. They want their own place. They want to spend time away from people. They like spending time alone, whatever it might be, right? Now these people, they're always going to keep fighting until they find a middle ground, okay? Great example, thank you. Balance versus usefulness. So if somebody values being balanced in all areas versus somebody else wants to be useful, right? And for the sake of time, I'll just explain it. Even though I wanted to ask you guys, the person who wants to be useful, if that's like their top value, they're going to burn themselves out, right? Because they're going to consistently do things for other people, and they don't know when to stop. And they think they're being a good person. So it is a good value to have, but without balance, it can run the other way, right? And that's actually true for all of them. None of them are bad, right? None of these values are bad. They're all good. Values are good. But it's like if you don't have that balance, you can just go the other way, and it can cause damage, right? The balanced person, in trying to be so balanced in everything, they might lose the passion. They might not have passion for anything anymore. They just become like a robot, right? They're balanced, like, yeah, okay, I'm giving 20% to my family, 20% to work, 20% to the gym, 20% to my ibadah, 20%. Okay, like you're a balanced person, which is great, but in achieving that balance, maybe you just lost the fire inside of you. You don't even enjoy anything anymore, right? You're just so busy timekeeping and like making a schedule that nothing in your life is fun anymore, right? So there's good and bad to both. Harmony versus justice, these people, so the justice person is gonna look like they're constantly starting a fight because they wanna get to the bottom of an issue, right? They wanna make sure, like, let's talk about this issue all the way through and like who's right and who's wrong and figure it out. And the harmony person, they wanna just brush it under the rug and not talk about it because they're like, I just wanna keep the peace. I don't wanna say anything that will upset you, and I don't want you to say anything that will upset me, right? Let's just keep the peace. But it's a surface level peace, right? So these people, they're not really going deep in their relationship. And the harmony person might accuse the justice person of being like a conflict-prone person. You just always want to fight, right? And then that person will be like, well, you never want to talk about anything, right? It's a very common problem. All of these are very common problems. All right, in a family unit, what might happen? So if a whole family, let's say a whole family of 5, like kids and parents, right? If they have harmony as their top 5 value, and one person, just one member of the family has courage, what can they get into? What type of conflict can they get into? Just one person has courage. Everybody else values harmony. What is one potential bad thing that can happen? You're about to say something? Okay, so they will basically be labeled the black sheep of the family. Because if there is something wrong going on in the family, because they're all harmony oriented, nobody wants to talk about it, they will all stay quiet. And they will allow things to go on as they're going on, even if something wrong is happening in the house, right? But the person who has courage is going to speak up. They can't stand it. They can't stand the fact that nobody's talking about it. So they're going to talk about it, and then everybody will shut them up. And now they're the bad guy, right? So the person with the courage can be labeled as the bad guy. That's something that can happen. There's another family now. They value resourcefulness, which basically means like making the most of what you have. So they stay in their budget. They don't spend too much money. They just want to like, okay, like we have $200 of fund money this month, and we all have to use it as a family. That's not a lot, right? $200 for 5 people is not a lot of money to use as fund money. But the fun person, right, one person, they value fun, they don't really care about budgeting, and they don't really care about staying in they're like, I just want to have fun, so I'm just going to go out and I'm going to spend the money, right? So they can get in trouble for that, obviously, and it can cause problems as to, well, I don't want to live a boring life, right? The fun person's like, I don't want to live a boring life. And the rest of the family's like, well, we don't want to go broke trying to have fun, right? So it causes problems. All right, braving. So Brene Brown, the same lady who came up with this list, she came up with this other like scenario. And this is basically like, how do we improve our relationships? So she came up with this acronym called braving, which stands for boundaries, reliability, accountability, vault, integrity, non-judgment, and generosity. And Brene Brown, by the way, is a psychologist, and she's a researcher. She has like a bunch of books, and she's super popular. She has a Netflix show. Yeah, and I'm a huge fan, so. All right, I'll just do one, and then we'll stop because the time is almost done. Okay, so braving. Boundaries means setting boundaries is making clear what's okay and what's not okay and why. So I'd be like, why is this Islamic? How is this Islamic? Why are we talking about boundaries? Like, self-development. This is like non-Muslim stuff. Why do we have to talk about it? Because in Surah Hujurat, Allah talks about boundaries. Okay? So Allah says to us, the believers, okay, O believers, do not proceed in any matter before a decree from Allah and His Messenger, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and fear Allah. Surely Allah is all-hearing, all-knowing. O believers, do not raise your voices above the voice of the Prophet, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, nor speak loudly to him as you do to one another, or your deeds will become void while you are unaware. Indeed, those who lower their voices in the presence of Allah's messengers are the ones whose hearts Allah has refined for righteousness. They will have forgiveness and a great reward. Indeed, most of those who call out to you, O Prophet, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, from outside your private quarters have no understanding of manners. Had they been patient until you could come out to them, it would have certainly been better for them. And Allah is all forgiving, most merciful. These are the first 5 ayahs of Surah Al-Hujurat. The context behind this is that the Prophet ﷺ used to live in a tiny house, right? A tiny, tiny house that's now Masjid al-Nabawi. And after Isha, it was his habit to go home. After Isha is not public time. The whole day the Prophet ﷺ would spend outside, right? Teaching people in the masjid, meeting new leaders and kings who would come from different countries, giving shahada to people who wanted to become Muslim. But after Isha, that was his family time. He was strictly with his family and he would not be talking to people outside. So there was a group of Muslims who had just become Muslim. They were new Muslims. They had a bunch of questions. You know how new Muslims can be sometimes agitated because they have so many questions, right? Like, how do I pray? How do I make wudu? Like, they're a little bit freaked out because they don't want to get sins, right? So these new Muslims came and they were shouting outside the house of the Prophet ﷺ. Like, Rasulullah, I want to speak to you. Like, come out, we want to speak to you. He didn't answer. He didn't answer. So this was Allah revealing ayat on behalf of the Prophet ﷺ, telling them to go home. So Allah was basically setting boundaries here. That's what Allah was doing. The Prophet ﷺ, because he was so kind, so gentle, he didn't want to push people away. But how do you say no to somebody when they're standing outside your house, right? Even sometimes we feel shy, right? Like maybe we're tired, sleepy. One of our family member comes after 9 p.m. What do? Do you let them in the house or do you tell them to go back home? It's a weird situation, right? It's awkward. It's socially awkward. So that's what these people were doing with the Prophet ﷺ. So Allah gave them a bunch of stern warnings. He said, O believers, do not raise your voices above his. Meaning, even though he's not talking right now, he's in his house. It's his peaceful time. Don't bother him. Don't raise your voices outside his house like that, right? It's better for you, he said, it's better that they should wait until you have done, until you're done with family time. Maybe you have some extra minutes to go talk to them. It's better for them to wait patiently. Like if you really want to wait for the Prophet ﷺ, don't shout out to him like you shout to somebody else, right? You have to wait outside with adab, with manners, with respect, right? So Allah's kind of teaching the believers here how to deal with the Prophet ﷺ. And from that, we learn how to deal with each other, right? In Surah An-Nur, what does Allah say? There are 3 times of privacy that people have. It's before Fajr, after Dhuhr, and after Isha. This means that, okay, we're done. I'm just going to explain this real quick. So basically this means that kids are not supposed to go to their parents' room during this time. It is a time of privacy, and they should seek permission. They should knock on the door if they're trying to go to their parents' room at this time, or even siblings visiting each other, whatever. Families basically should have privacy during this time. So Allah sets a lot of boundaries in the Quran. Even Surah An-Nur, the whole surah has so many different things in terms of social interactions that we're allowed to do and not allowed to do, right? And one of those last ones is, if somebody comes to your house, if you go to somebody's house and you knock 3 times or you ring the doorbell 3 times, they don't answer, you go back home. Period. End of story. They don't have to give you any explanation. It's not considered rude in Islam, and you have to go back home if they don't allow you to come in, right? So we have to respect those boundaries as Muslims. All right, well, and there, subhana rabbika rabbil izzati amma yasifun wa salamun ala al-mursaleen walhamdulillahi rabbil alamin. Okay. Yeah, of course. Yes, inshallah. Every Wednesday. But next week we have the Tuesday one too. Tuesday 7:30.